brute force. If it doesn't work, you're just not using enough. You're listening to SOFREP Radio, special operations military news, and straight talk with the guys in the community.
Hey, what's going on? It is your host, Rad, and I have an awesome episode of SOFREP Radio for you. I got a really cool guest, but before I introduce you to him, who you already know it is because you clicked on the link and you saw the name of who I'm interviewing, but listen, here's the surprise, the merch store. Go check out sofrep.com/merch and go pick up some of the cool items that are out there. I think we just got new shirts that say SOFREP right across the front, so it's like you can't miss it, you know? And I think they made one that's backwards, so when you take your selfie, it looks forwards. So go check out the merch store, okay? And that's at sofrep.com/merch. And what else am I gonna say? Say it with me to those of you who are repeat listeners. Book club, that's right, sofrep.com/book-club. If you are new to the program, welcome. If you wanna check out a book, use The Gym, which is a book for your mind. Go check out our book club. We have great authors. They're all curated from the special operations team behind the scenes here at sofrep.com. So without further ado, and I'll introduce you to his bio here in just a moment, but let me introduce Patrick Naughton, who has written Born from War. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rad. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful, and I just want you to know, I'm clapping, right? I always clap. I am the studio audience, okay? So when we go back and listen to it, just know that I am your studio audience.
Nice.
Well, welcome, former actually current Lieutenant Colonel, correct? Not
Yes,
retired.
sir.
You're still in, huh?
Retired.
Still dabbling, still going for it.
After it, still doing it.
Let me, I'm gonna read a little bit about you and then we'll get into you, okay? Patrick W. Naughton Jr. is Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army and a military historian. Currently, he is an instructor at the U.S. Army's Command and General Staff College, CGSC, at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Patrick is also currently serving as a fellow at the Simons Center for Ethical Leadership and Interagency Cooperation, a program of the CGSC Foundation. In addition to various tactical, operational, and strategic assessments held over 28 years in the Army, Patrick has also served as a legislative liaison to the U.S. Senate, an Interagency Fellow with the Department of Labor, and a Congressional Partnership Program Fellow with the Partnership for a Secure America. He has also served as a Senior Fellow with West Point's Center for Junior Officers. Patrick is also the recipient of the General Douglas MacArthur Leadership Award. He holds a master's degree in history from CGSC, where he was an Art of War scholar, and a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Patrick has published with over a dozen peer-reviewed history and national security journals, and he lives in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas with his wife Sheila and son Thomas. Patrick's work can be found at www.patnaughton.com. That's World Wide Web, period, patnaughton.com, okay? So you want to learn more about him after the show, you can go check out that website. But welcome again to the show. What a great bio.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I hear that bio and I'm like, is that me? What are you talking about? Like, it's been a long 28 years, that's for sure.
It is. And so how old are you today?
I am 46. I'll be 47 in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so I was born in 1977.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's up? We know about Zelda, right?
Yeah. Well, we didn't have any video games growing up. We didn't have that kind of money, but
my dad had to have it.
Yeah.
How great. So you've got some reviews of your book here. Captain Dale Dye wrote a nice description about your book. Should I read it?
Yeah, sure, if you'd like to, yeah.
As a father and a multi-tour Vietnam veteran, I struggle to explain my war and my voluntary service in it to my children. Reading about author Patrick Naughton's similar experiences in his family helped me understand that broad generational gap that confounded so many of us between our war and what was faced by younger veterans of America's global war on terror. What we had between seminal events was more than a simple failure to communicate. The insights provided by Naughton's Born from War are enlightening and invaluable. Captain Dale Dye, USMC, retired author, actor, filmmaker. So many things he's been a part of, from Platoon to Saving Private Ryan, that we'd all know him if we saw him.
Yep.
And you may not have seen him, but he's made all the movies try to be accurate and depict, great, Oscars and things like that. And he's saying that he enjoyed your book because he had issues to try to talk to his kids. You have a dad, and not only are you military, but your dad, you're like, hey, Dad, talk to me. What's up?
Yeah. No, that was definitely an amazing endorsement from Dale Dye. I just reached out to him cold, and he responded right away. I was quite shocked by it, and I guess he really liked the topic of the book, as you can tell from his endorsement. And so I sent him a copy, and that's what he provided. And I always tell all of my students here at CGSC that one of the things to live by in life is to make people tell you no. So, people were always like, oh, you shouldn't reach out to, Dale Dye and all these other people that I reached out to that are that are also endorsed the book. He or she will never respond, don't worry. So I was like, well, I'll make them tell me no, and I'll reach out to them, and the worst thing that's going to happen is they're just not going to respond. They're not going to say anything, or they're going to respond and say, hey, it's not for me. I really got some amazing endorsements from some really interesting people, which you can see on the back cover of the book, especially Dale Dye being kind of the leading one. But Dr. Craig Venter, he was a Vietnam veteran. He also wrote an endorsement, and he's the guy who discovered the human genome. So he's like a really huge guy as well, that I was very shocked by. And all of them, I think what enticed them or what interested them about the book was that family piece of it, that intergenerational connection of service. I mean, you yourself, your father was a Green Beret.
Correct.
And that influenced you. Yeah, Vietnam, and that influenced you heavily in life. Whether that parent wanted it to influence you or not, it did. And so I would say that to all the listeners out there who have worn a uniform or still wearing a uniform, that you really have no idea how much your service influences your kids. Whether you are talking about it all the time or whether you never talk about it and you have all this stuff hidden in closets like my dad did, who never talked about it and never was something that he tried to encourage with me. It has a huge influence on your kids, and you probably don't even realize it.
100%. Before my father passed away, he saw that I got into this like war game lifestyle, and he's like, I'm sorry that this is the business you chose and that you and that I introduced it to you at such a young age. And I was like, why, Dad? I love it. And he's like, that's why. And he's like, that's why. And he never really bragged about it. I think I brag about my dad more than he ever would. Or like, it came full circle for me to know about my dad when all the cops in Layton, Utah would come and hang out. And I'm on my skateboard, and I'm like skating in the street, and you're not supposed to skate in the street. And all the cops are there, and my dad's on the curb, and they're talking. And I'm just like skating, being a little punk kid, like, you can't stop me, my dad's right there. I didn't realize that he was the coolest guy on the block. Okay, right. So they weren't just there harassing anybody. They were there stopping by and say, hey, what's up, Jack? How's it going? You run the armory over here at the junior high school with all the other A-team, that kind of thing. They knew who he was. I just thought 11-year-old me was like, oh, Dad's just talking to the cops. No, dude, and he did influence me so heavily, taking me up in the mountains with his team without ever saying, why is your 10-year-old tagging along with us? Why do we have a Mowgli going up these hills with us? And they were in uniform. They were just in like jeans and plaid shirts and tucked in with belts, just like out of uniform. So my dad always asked me, why did you want to go Air Force, And I was like, well, if I get through, they have a blue beret. And it's not as hard as a Green Beret. He just looked at me and said, that's all I wanted to know. So there is that generational gap, like you were saying, where he never talked about it. My mom said, here's his file if you want to know what he told the therapist at the VA. And I opened up page 1, and I might have turned to page 2, and then I just shut it. I was like, if my dad wanted me to know these things, he would have told me these things, And so I still have that file. I've not cracked into it. So I just want to bring that to you on this because I feel like a little bit of, that's what we're getting at here, is like what the dad, the generational gap.
Yeah, he growing up, he never talked about Vietnam. Once in a while, a little story would sneak out or something would sneak out, and that was the only way that you knew. I mean, he never, he never wore like veterans hats or had bumper stickers or was part of the VFW or any of those types of things. It's just something he never talked about. And then as a kid, you always sneak around looking through your parents' stuff and digging through their closets or whatever. And so in doing that, I would discover pieces of uniform, old medals, ribbons, things like that. And so that's kind of like, that was the influence on my life, is that it was always in the background that I knew my father was a Vietnam veteran.
Sure.
We never talked about it. So, that really influenced me to then join the Army. And then, decades later, we found all these letters that he wrote home from Vietnam, as well as a diary that he kept for the year that he was there. And so being able to, dig through all that stuff, and by that point I'd already, written a whole bunch of articles and was really into writing, and had always wanted to write a book. And so that was kind of the genesis of the book idea, is coming from finding all that stuff and then going through it. And then, like you mentioned just a second ago, we never really, we think we know our parents, right, but we don't. The only way we know them is from like growing up and, how they disciplined us or whatever, and we grew up with them. But when you get a chance to, and I hope one day you do open that file and read it, and because then you'll really discover who your dad is,
Yeah.
And that can be quite powerful.
Page 1 was kind of nuts, it talks about Vietnam and some things that he had seen, and what turned him into a Green Beret was the things he had seen done to other Green Berets that they were finding. And so I can see the crossover from him being a young 17-year-old Navy, he did Morse code radioman, to being a 19th Special Forces Group guy, 18 Echo radio guy, right? Morse code. So I can see how he just went from one to the other, because he's like, I'm just gonna wear the beret that I was finding around. In his file, it's interesting. I have to read more of it. I only read one page and I stopped.
Yeah, I would highly encourage you to read it. I mean, I think it would be quite moving for you.
Maybe it's been time.
Yeah.
And and at the time I was just so fresh, and I was just like, he had just passed, and Mom was like, well, here's his file and stuff, and I was just like,
But I think that's probably a good, TTP, a technique for our some of the people listening to this who have served is, they don't want to talk about it maybe to their kids and so on, but maybe leave something behind, maybe leave some letters that they write to them. What I'm doing with my son is, my wife and I are doing is, we created an email for him. All right, now he's only 3 years old right now. So we created an email for him, and then every so often we email him, our thoughts and what we're doing in our lives and things like that, and thoughts of him. And then when he's 18, we're going to give him the password, and he'll be able to look back through 18 years of our thoughts and love for him and experiences that we're going through in our own lives.
What a journal way.
Like
that's cool to journal. You guys uploading some images of him. Hey, here you are.
Yeah, images. I mean, just writing whatever. Like, hey, we just PCS'd again after a year. We're at Fort Leavenworth. So you've already lived in 3 places and you're only 3 years old. So just things like that. And so it's kind of. So I think leaving that for your kids. And so like you have this file that you can read one day, or these emails that you give them the password when they're 18, or even all your old ribbons and your medals and your write-ups, maybe even your evaluations. Keep all that in a folder somewhere, give it to them when they're adults. I think that might be quite interesting.
I still have Pop's uniform, his full Class A's with his blue cord and everything. I looked at it and I was like, how did he fit in this? He got bigger, a little bigger after, and stuff like that. And then I'm 6'5". I'm like, there's no way I could even fit in this, And I still have his camouflage pants from his Woodlands, and I have some of his old greens with his name on it from when he was first in the 80s. The old OD green uniforms with the slant pockets. So I still have some of that, and I cherish it, and sometimes I'll smell it.
Yeah.
And I have his helmet, his K-pot, that has his Woodland cover, and it's got like C-17 6 jumps, and he's got like all these slashes of different aircraft.
Yeah.
I'll smell the interior of it. Okay, I just want you to know. That's what I'm always looking for. Wasn't trying to have a session with you today on therapy, but
no, it's good. It's good conversation. I mean, I think it's important for veterans and people who serve to realize that the impact that it has on their children and their spouse too, and then to save something for them that they can then look on later in life, when they're adults for themselves, and get a better understanding of you when you were young and raising them and so on. So.
Like his ring right here that my mom gave me when he passed in 2013. It's his Special Forces ring right here. So
nice, yeah.
My kids all look at it like, hey, can we put that on our thumb? Can we try it on, Dad? My daughter, she's, It's like, do I leave it to her? Do I leave it to my son? Do I leave it to my other daughter? It's like, they can figure it out, but it's here. Here it is.
Yeah.
Grandpa's, handed down. Yeah.
I know, and they have all these recordings too from this podcast.
100%.
Well,
Immortalized, right? As long as the internet's not cut at the bottom of the ocean on us, then we should have.
Yeah.
So born from war, right? You yourself enlisted at what age or went commissioned? Do you mind telling a little bit about how you decided to join the military, at what age that was?
Yeah, so, like I said, growing up, it was always kind of an influence. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind that I would join the Army, because my dad was in the Army. We have a long history of family members going all the way back to the American Revolution who had fought in pretty much every single war. But I was a teenager. I got into a lot of trouble. I was a really bad kid, and so I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Thankfully, up until that point, I hadn't gotten in any serious trouble that would have kept me out of joining the Army.
Right.
But I was in school, and I was in a special program for like troublemaker kids, and so I was acting up, and one of the teachers was got frustrated with me and was like, "What the heck are you going to do with your life?" And I was like, "F you, I'm going to join the Army, whatever." And then she was like, "Okay," and so she went, and then about a couple minutes later, she's like, "Oh, there's a phone call for you." And they had phones in the classroom then in case we acted out, and I was like, "Okay," and I got it, and it was a recruiter. And the recruiter was like, "Meet me at the flagpole after school," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I was 17, joined. My dad signed the delayed entry program, and so that's 17. And then about I think 3 months later, went off to basic, joined the infantry like my dad. My dad was an infantry officer, but I was an infantry enlisted at that time. Joined the infantry, did about 6 years. Did some 101st time, got out, did some Hawaii National Guard time still in the infantry. Became an NCO. Went back into ROTC, got my degree, had my GI Bill, had all that stuff, everything all paid for. It was really awesome, and then got commissioned, and then like my bio, done a whole bunch of really cool things since then. So it's been quite a ride for sure.
I understand the class. Can I tell you that? The special class? I was in that class. Yeah.
There you go.
We had a timeout box. So
nice.
Yeah. So if the kid acted out or said, F you, they're like, go to timeout. And you'd have to go on your own accord, or they brought the second grader in one time and just put him in there. He's kicking it. He's like, "You guys suck. This teacher suck. All these schools." He needed to be in there, and then he went to sleep. That's so funny that you. Yeah. Oh, I was a second-year senior in high school, and always skateboarding and always doing things and just out there. So funny enough, just not bad enough to have a record.
Yeah, just not bad enough. I didn't get caught, at least, to get a record.
So
yeah, I mean, the army really saved my life. Had I not joined the Army, I have this reoccurring nightmare where I wake up in a jail cell, and and everything that happened in my past life was all a dream, and really all along I've been in this jail cell. So that's kind of where I was in the Army. Really redirected me, thankfully, and I think it does that for a lot of people who join the military, thankfully.
It can give a lot of people a direction: left, right, straight, U-turn, start over, do something a little different, whatever the case may be. It's like, it does give you a direction though in life, and it helps you to get out and understand a little bit of a chain of command makes sense. You're like, oh, hey,
discipline,
I get why I get why there's a hierarchy in my job.
Right.
It kind of makes sense, go up the chain. And so, what was the questions that you had about your dad that inspired you to want to write, the Born from War, Vietnam, Iraq, Global War on Terror, blended? What was that in you? I know you're a historian, okay? I know you make sense with the emails to your son, right?
Yeah. No, it was once we had all that material, I mean, it was just really wanting to know more about that war. Vietnam. I'm a historian, so, but Vietnam, most of us don't know much about Vietnam. All we know is from a bunch of corny 80 movies that show us that it was all bad, and then, even in professional military education for the military, we kind of skip over Vietnam a little bit. We jump right from World War II to Desert Storm, etc., really focusing on that large-scale combat operations. So I really wanted to know more about that war, and then my dad's experience in that war. And, during the process of writing the book, I tracked down all the influence that Vietnam had when he was growing up, and the people that died in his neighborhood, how I talked to those families and how that influenced their families. Even 50, 60 years later, they still miss them. And then all the people that he served with, I was able to track down a lot of them and actually interview them. So I was able to cold call these, social media, you can find anybody. And I was able to find these people, so they're 50, 60 years later, the son of somebody that they served with, decades ago, out of nowhere, has reached them and asking them about, his father and their experience in the war and how all that played together. And I have the same name as my dad, so, to them, getting this random email from a guy they knew, learning that it's his son, So that was really interesting. And then just taking all the lessons from Vietnam, that counterinsurgency fight, and then looking at, GWAT. I mean, I was in Iraq, so that's really what I focused on, but GWAT overall as a whole. And looking at some of the same bear traps that we walked right into, and had we really studied and understood what we did, what we tried, what we applied in Vietnam, we probably could have avoided some things that we did in Iraq and Afghanistan and other theaters. So all that's together in the book. So it's not just a dry history. It has some historical chapters if you like that kind of stuff, but it really takes a personal look at both wars from the human experience, and then historically combines both of the lessons that we missed and so on, and all of that together. So I'm hoping that it appeals to a much broader audience, and not just to military audience, and not just to like a historian audience. I hope that it appeals to like a broader society, understanding how that influences people who serve, intergenerational, and how that impact on society as a whole.
Now, Patrick, tell me what your dad did in Vietnam. Like, I know he was an infantry officer. I might have heard the 101st, maybe from you or from him. Tell me again, what was his detail in Vietnam that you can recall?
Yeah, so he was in the 82nd Airborne as an infantry officer. And what's funny is, the 82nd was that strategic reserve that was kept back from Vietnam. They were supposed to be the ones that would answer if Russia or Soviet Union at the time, something like that happened. But after Tet, they needed more force flow to come in very quickly, and so they broke glass and they sent the 82nd. So my dad was not airborne. He went straight from IOBC, and then went to jungle training, and then went to Vietnam, and then was plugged into 82nd, even though he wasn't airborne, because 82nd wasn't airborne tagged at the time in Vietnam. But he came in on the tail end of that deployment of the 82nd. So he did 6 months with the 82nd, and then the 82nd redeployed back to Bragg. But he didn't get to go because he still had 6 months that he owed the Big Green Machine. So then he became an ARVN advisor, and he advised the South Vietnamese Army with the 25th ARVN Division. So he did 6 months with the 82nd, and he did 6 months as an ARVN advisor, and he did it right in from 1969 to 1970, which is right when the Vietnam War was changing from pacification with the U.S. in the lead to Vietnamization to the Vietnamese in the lead. So he literally was like right at that gap when that happened at that strategic level. That's when he joined at that tactical level and was doing exactly the same thing that was being briefed strategically. So it's a really interesting perspective of the Vietnam War to see it from, large American unit that he's leading, as a platoon leader in the 82nd, to then going and advising the ARVN to now take the war, take charge of the war and be the front while the Americans take a step back. Wow. So that's what he did, and he saw with the ARVN, he saw way more combat than he did with the 82nd, which kind of flips that narrative on its head. Is that most people, when they think about Vietnam, they think that the ARVN units were very poor performing, and they dropped their rifle. That joke that I can sell you an ARVN rifle, never fired, only dropped once. Type of thing. But he found that the ARVN battalion that he was advising was extremely ferocious, and they really fought like tigers, and he saw way more combat with them than he did with the 82nd.
He probably appreciated being with them because that's their backyard.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, come this way. No, this way. No, just between these trees, bro.
Yeah.
See, punji sticks are here. There's none here. It's like. And
what's funny is, like, my dad, I talked to a lot of the other advisors on his team that he was with, and they said exactly what you just said. They would, like, the Vietnamese would stop and say, "Hey, I smell something." Yep. And the American would be like, "What?" And they're smelling things that are out of place in their native environment that shouldn't be there. My dad was 6'2", so the Viet Cong would hang up booby traps, at his level, trying to hit the American advisors. And so that was something he had to watch out too, that the ARVN taught him to duck down in certain places and things like that. So really, really fascinating experience. And like I said, he kept the letters and he kept his diary. So I have a real detailed time of that year of war that he did. And then anything that was missing, I was able to fill in the gap from the others that I found that he served with.
They're so unconventional warfare, right? I mean, like these guys that were LERPs and everybody that went into the jungles, people I've talked to and interviewed, getting like some real accounts from them, walking on trails, and then just their guys drop, but they just see the enemy and then they shoot. The guys are like, didn't say nothing behind them. They're like, what? Right. Mind readers, it's like, oh, and don't forget, watch out for your head because there's booby traps hanging from the trees, You're like, bro, I'm trying not to step in a tiger pit.
Yeah, it's an operational environment that I think, us veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, it would just be so foreign to us. What special operations and line units faced in Vietnam was just so different than what we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh yeah.
So it's just really interesting. Yeah, those guys were tough, man. The
The rain alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I read about that too. The rain. My dad got trench foot, all kinds of other things from constant immersion. So yeah, really, really hard war. Really, Vietnam was really ugly in that sense, in the conditions that they had to fight under.
Well, yeah, and today we have more of a technological war going on, but there's still, what I call the snowpiercer element, the human element that has to keep the machine going, right? Even though we want it to just be like androids fighting each other with no souls going up to heaven and hell and stuff, but who's controlling those? And then once you get to that element, you take out those guys. So there's got to be this human element in combat. It's just crazy, dude. It's just,
what's interesting is Vietnam tried to use technology too. We don't really realize that they tried to use technology as that, I guess, combat enhancer or whatever, a way to keep soldiers, keep boots off of the ground. They tried things like dropping sensors that would embed into the ground, and they would set off an alarm anytime somebody walked by it. I mean, they tried all kinds of things like that, which you don't give enough credit for. And you're exactly right. It still required troops on the ground, no matter how much technology they tried to apply. In Vietnam and then later Iraq, Afghanistan. Yeah,
because JDAMs and whatnot don't just they have to be guided in. It's like it's like someone's looking at something. It's like don't turn the binoculars. Okay. Right. It's like a movie where he looks with the laser. What?
Yeah, like what happened? Oh.
So. You've written so much. You're a historian of the military. What is your favorite genre that you like to focus on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, American Civil War is probably my most favorite. That's one of the least selling genres, unfortunately.
Yeah, but such a repeating of history genre.
Yeah, it's such a saturation. There's so many Civil War books and things that it's hard to get something out on that. But I enjoy any military history, and one of the things I've discovered, as I write all these articles, and then now my book, I'm working on my second book now, is that when you look at military history, uniforms change, the reason for the conflict change, the weapons, technology, things like that, but that common military experience is so timeless. You can read something, if you could find it about a Roman centurion and that common military experience and bring it all the way forward to Iraq and Afghanistan, you would find that common, timeless experience of being in the military, joining up, being subjected to that discipline, shipping out overseas, just the common hardships that you face when you put on a uniform. I mean, it's so timeless that it's always shocking whenever I read into those historical narratives and stuff.
Right, because you do have a degree in the art of war. Mm-hmm. Right, and so it's attack at night and fall back, and then attack when they retreat, and then don't attack in the daylight kind of thing, and just the simplest thought process Sun Tzu wrote. The book is about, I can't remember how many pages, but it's not very many.
It's not very big. Yeah, it's not big at all.
Yeah, it's just move out of the way.
Yeah, there's some common, some very common strategic themes that are also timeless as well, which you can glean from that study of history too.
I had a Marine I interviewed yesterday that'll come out here in a few, probably right before your show if anybody's listening. But we were talking about how he didn't quite know what to hold on to in a conflict, and so his instructors before they went to go to Iraq and in 2006 said, let me tell you about Valhalla. And so he wound up writing a book called Valhalla Boys. And
okay,
so,
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah. And so Valhalla was something that he was able to, they talked about the warrior ethos of a Viking and the Norse and how they believed in transcending through battle. And he's like, that kind of gave me a good sense of grounding, so, it's hard because you come from, we all come from somewhere. Some people don't have a faith that's been taught to them. Mm-hmm. Some people just come from, maybe an orphanage into the military and never had anybody but a drill sergeant love them the most. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that drill, and so it's what do they have to latch onto? How do they find that grounding mechanism? And so, like you said, it can go all the way back to a centurion. It can go all the way back to Norse, Like
that's,
you're
that's,
saying,
that's an importance. Yeah, it's an importance of military history, of unit history especially. Is Sir Michael Howard. He's really the most famous historian to really latch onto that idea that you just mentioned. Is that the importance of history is you can use it to build that camaraderie, that history, that pride in your unit, which can help you survive and thrive in combat situations. So, soldiers in the 101st. I was a 101st, infantryman. We can always, no matter what hardship you find yourself in, you can always think back to, oh man, think of those guys in World War II, Battle of the Bulge, all that type of stuff, and you can pull forward that sense of pride, that sense of camaraderie, and that it gives you that strength to further push forward. And you can find that, like you said, with Valhalla, but you can find that, the 82nd. I mean, right. any unit you want to name out there, and that's really that power of that history. So, as a leader in formations out there, I would suggest not to overlook that power of that history, and then use it, capture it, and you're almost doing like a propaganda type thing, mm-hmm. and using it to help, instill some pride, some ability to be resilient and to push forward, within your formations. I think it's a really powerful tool that a lot of people overlook.
Yeah, what would you suggest to somebody who's thinking about going into the military right now? A lot of my listeners will be the younger kids looking up to you. Maybe someone in their 20s is like, maybe this is my moment. It's like, yeah. I'm a little older, I got some college, but I want to enlist. What's your advice to somebody who's thinking about this from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say, I always tell every young person, if you don't know what you want to do, you're 17, 18, and you don't know if you want to go to college, you don't know if you want to go to trade school, you don't know if you just want to go to work, whatever, consider the military. I mean, now the way the military is set up, it's no longer that 20-year system. Now it has a blended retirement system where you can do 3 years or whatever it is, and then you can walk away with like a 401k. So that's huge. So I would suggest go to the military for a couple of years. It'll help you find yourself. You'll get to see the world. You'll get some amazing experiences, some amazing exposure, and all that. But also, I would say make the military work for you. So you want to serve, right? You're already giving yourself to that service, to our nation. So that's huge. But also take back a little bit too. So take advantage of the GI Bill. Take advantage of anything else that they're offering. If you want to be a door kicker and you want to go infantry or you want to go special forces, get after it. Awesome. But also consider, hey, what's some other things that I could use that are gonna, things that I could learn that are gonna make me marketable? Maybe learning about computers or radios, right. or AI, all that cutting edge stuff that the military is working on. So my biggest advice, take advantage of whatever the military is offering. GI Bill, if you can get a couple college classes knocked out of the way with the education center on post, do that. Get some good, some training, whether it's cyber type stuff or some type of trade or whatever it is, all of that, so that if you do decide to get out and not do 20 plus years, then you've got stuff. You've got a 401k, you've got a GI Bill you can fall on, you've got that trade skill or whatever it is that you can also leverage as well when you're getting out.
Your VA home loan.
Yeah, VA home loan. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits that are available right now. So take advantage of all that stuff. You're going to give, so give yourself, be selfless. Do that selfless service, that sacrifice, but also take back as well. Whatever they have to offer, take it. So you walk out with a whole bunch of stuff in your kit bag, ready to move on to your next career, take on the world. All that's going to help you out. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, that's great advice too, and just going in and talking to someone at a career center for the military is just your first step, right? You just got to take that step, open the door, say, hey, what's up? Someone I was interviewing one time, they said they went into the Army, they were pretty committed to the Army, but then all of a sudden they went Navy SEAL next door, and they didn't mean to offend anybody, but they just said, well, I felt a different direction, but they still went.
Shop around, around, check them all out,
And you can ask for what you want. If you say you want to be a truck driver and you want to get the best truck driving training, you can go in as that, and you can come out with the creds of, an Army 88 Mike truck driver that knows how to do it all. I mean, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
that's good advice too. Yeah, shop around, definitely. Hit up each service and see what they're gonna
make them offer to you, because they're called career centers now.
Yeah, they are, and they're all. Most of them are co-located, so you don't have to walk far.
No, you don't. You can check them out, and you can just or just act out in class and you'll get a phone call. You'll see.
Get a phone call. Yeah. You know, I don't even know if that teacher legally was supposed to do that. Like, I'm not sure if she could. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure if that would be allowed today. That you could just like call a recruiter and link them up with a student. You know, I don't know.
I don't think the timeout box is allowed anymore today.
Yeah, probably
there's
not.
a lot of things that aren't allowed anymore. You know,
Yeah.
the level system, eating lunch in the room or in the cafeteria. Come on. But I mean, I get it. There's some kids out there. You know. And we love you, okay? My troubled kids. Alternative high school all day right here.
Like that's what I did.
Second year senior, but you know what? A second year senior means that I pushed through. I still kept going. My friends were sleeping in while I was going to school at 7 in the morning every single day because I had to graduate. I had to get credits. I had to just push forward. And I think I get a lot of that from my dad and my mom, you know, instilling in me, you know, like a lot of, okay, let me just really quick just hijack this conversation. So I had a skateboard shop when I was 13 years old. And so I was selling skateboards out of my garage. My dad was like really impressed with me selling, you know, grilled cheeses at first. And all the kids were selling lemonade and I sold grilled cheeses. And I was making like 30, 40 bucks a day selling grilled cheeses. He ran an armory at a junior high school that had a candy machine in it. And all the guys would buy it. And he was just super smart and just had a vending machine. And I would take his supply and sell it out front. Okay, nice. So out front, moms are sending their kids over to pick up Diet Cokes. You know, go buy them from Radel. Go buy the Diet Cokes down the street from Radel. You don't have to go to the store. So I would just sell them two for a buck. Yeah. And my dad's like, one day he comes up to me, he's like, let me ask you something. How much you make today on those Diet Cokes? I said about $13. He's like, well, you know they're 60 cents now, right? Because they're not 50 cents. I was like, oh, bro, I forgot they went up to 60 cents at the vending machines. So I had to pay him back. But he said I was doing so well on the grilled cheeses that I was making money. Minus the bread, the cheese, the rent, the refrigerator that cost electricity, the stove that had natural gas. He broke it down like, you should owe me this much, but I'm gonna just charge you X. So I said, buy me a business license in Layton. Let me open a skate shop. I know I can sell these skateboards. And he had a business degree in human resource and business management as a Green Beret. And he was working all the way to his doctorate, public speaking and business communications and stuff. So I think he just really instilled in me this business mentality of just like go after it that, like you said, was hidden the whole time. It wasn't like, he just kind of groomed me into this businessman that I am today. I have multiple shops, I'm successful, entrepreneur, you know, same mentality I had with my skate shop, except what happened to my skate shop is I didn't have any insurance. So as a 17, 18-year-old kid now, from 13 to 18, I got like $60,000 in inventory. I got snowboards and skateboards. Nice. I have a whole arcade with like Tron and Mortal Kombat and all these different games, paying the rent. And what happened was some skaters that got TDY'd with their dad to Hill Air Force Base, who I'd never met, crowbarred the front door, stole everything. Oh, man. I was just broke all my glass cases, took all the wheels, all the trucks. Took all my stuff that was on layaway. And I was just like, oh man, right before Christmas. So that pretty much ended it right there, which is what gave me a direction to go to college at 19. And then I joined the Air Force and I was supposed to have a skate shop, right? So he just instilled in me this business. So later in life, I said to myself, okay, I'll always open a business, but I'll do it the three ways. Okay, location, 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 insurance, 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 and location, location, location. Nice. So, you know, thanks again to Dad for, you know, inspiring me to be a businessman, you know, at such a young age, which is why I was always not in school. You see, I was running my skate shop.
Right, yeah.
So at 10 a.m., dude, you'd find me opening the shop and I'm just slinging skateboards to all the skater dudes that are like 19, right? At 15, 16. So I'm like, who needs school? Well, I needed school because what happened, I got broke into, everything got snatched out from underneath me, and I still had a chance to graduate. Yeah. So that's, you know, thanks Dad and Mom for, you know, inspiring me there. Yeah, for
Always
sure.
have a plan B. That's what that lesson is.
But we don't have a planet B. So we got to take of what we got here. We got to be good stewards today.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, just to give you some backstory on the skate shop, right, and how I was getting there. That's what it is, you know. So anybody can open a business. You just got to be out of a job. You're like, how do I hustle? How do I do this? You know, a lot of folks getting out of the military, they're like, how did you do it? And I was like, well, when you don't have a job, you become an entrepreneur. You're like, how do I eat
forced
today?
On you,
how do I eat? Yeah, that's the trick about being an entrepreneur is you got to risk yourself, and yourself is something you're so selfish about. You know, I know we're selfless swear oaths, but at the end of the day, it's you that cares about you the most.
It's true.
So
you gotta take care of yourself. Yeah.
And I would love to tell everybody all about your book. There's chapters in your book, Born from War, that are like, I think chapter 19, let me see here real quick. Is that the one that says, killing people is the easiest thing in the world?
Yeah, yeah.
What a chapter title.
Yeah, that was a direct, so all the chapters start with a quote from somebody that I interviewed or
oh, I see.
Yeah, so that was one of the advisors that I was with my dad. That was one of the quotes that during our conversation that he said to me.
Is that killing is the easiest thing in the world?
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff. I mean, talking to these guys who fought in Vietnam, I mean, some of the things they said, and all of it's in the book, it just kind of blows you away. Today's PC world, it would not fly, and you're just like, whoa, smokes, I can't believe you just said that.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to talk to them because they were really, really honest, about what they experienced in the war, and really bared their souls to me, which I was very surprised by. I did not expect that. And so, all of that's in the book. I tried to, obviously I treated it respectfully, and I did leave a lot of things out that, some of them talked bad about other people and things like that. I left some of that stuff out just because there was no need for that. But yeah, so really, really heartfelt, deep conversations that I had with them, which I hope really come across in the book.
Yeah, and one more chapter I'll call out here is, where was it? Red, white, and blue on blue? Is that what it's called? Red, white, and blue? Let me find it here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
No,
where
you're
was
good.
it at? But it's like red, white, and blue on blue. Probably talking about, friendly fire.
Yeah, that's not one of mine. I'm not sure.
Let me see here. I'll find it real quick. I was just reading. Killing people, the battalion. Should I read all your chapters real quick? You want me to say them? You want me to tell you them? Let me tell you the quote. Should I take some quotes? What are you going to do with your life?
Yeah, that was me. Okay. You already talked about that one.
Get out of this house. He never wanted to worry me.
Yeah.
Singing when the lights went out.
Yeah, that was about one of the guys that died in my dad's neighborhood.
Oh, a little pissant war.
Yeah, that was my dad's. That was LBJ's quote. Said, "What about that little pissant war in Vietnam?"
He cried on the way home.
Yeah, that was my grandfather dropping my dad off in Vietnam.
Oh, is that right?
Dropping off at the airport. Yeah.
I finally had my war.
Yeah, that was me in Iraq.
Oh, yeah, you finally did. Oh, yeah. No, I love that. No, I love this. This is actually super fun. Yeah. A breaking point.
Yeah, that was between 69 and 70 when Vietnam hit that point where we decided America has to get out and Vietnamese got to take the lead.
It's the year my dad went in as a Navy. His 17 was in 68, 69.
Oh, yeah, same time, yeah.
Never knew his dad was coming out at 69. But my dad never knew his dad. My dad was adopted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
wow.
So his dad was ending the National Guard service as my dad was enlisting as a Navy radio guy. And
that's interesting.
he never knew this. I found this out doing DNA afterwards and everything, genealogy. Let's see here. Looks like Vietnam.
Yeah, that was pictures I sent home of flying over Iraq to my dad, and he was like, "Oh, it looks like Vietnam."
Well, he sees what he sees.
Yeah, because my dad, he fought in the area. So a lot of people, when they see Vietnam, they think of the jungle, and a lot of Vietnam was actually rice paddies. So my dad primarily fought against the Viet Cong in the rice paddied areas around Saigon. So different than what most people think. They think of these dense jungles, which some units did serve in, but most people fought in jungle, the rice paddied areas, around the population areas. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some depictions in films I've seen where that's exactly what the battle is in the rice paddies and mortars going off and landmines strewn everywhere throughout probably still to this day.
Oh yeah. There's still, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. People are still
Myanmar, all
losing limbs to that stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Burma. It really is. Man, my men are a strange group. Let me guess.
That's my dad.
You. Oh,
that's both of us actually. So most of the chapters are compare and contrast. So it's like my dad talking about the bunch of draftees that he has, and then me, when I was in the 101st and stuff with the soldiers.
Yeah, that's
that
what I'm picking. I'm going back and forth here. Like the grenade belonged to him.
Yeah, that was my dad. He had they were doing a patrol, and they had this captain who thought he was a hot shot, and he ended up the pin in his grenade ended up getting caught in a bush, and he blew himself up. But he still got a Purple Heart. Tried to hide it and made it like it was contact with the enemy when it wasn't.
And maybe I was dreaming that red, white, and blue on blue. I don't know why I was thinking that, you know. Maybe I was just like, you know, thinking something outside myself. But, you know, I would say that if anybody wants to know the rest of these chapters, like chapter 19, the killing people is the easiest thing in the world, or the equal of the VC. Who said the equal of the VC? Who said that?
Yeah, so that was the ARVN. So people talking about, my dad talking positively about the ARVN is that they held their own against the Viet Cong. At least the guys that he advised, for sure.
And then this one, I'm going to mention this chapter. Your dad did some really heroic stuff. Which dad, you or him?
Yeah, my dad, yeah. So what was interesting, you know, my dad is a Bronze Star with Valor winner in Vietnam. And what was interesting is that, you know, as I was doing the research for my book, I came across a retired Lieutenant General, General Richard Keller. He was the UCOM commander at one point, retired. But he was getting interviewed as part of a Boy Scout project way back in like 2012. So I actually met him, and he's actually one of my mentors right now. But so I found this online through the Library of Congress, and so he made this comment in 2012, well before I met him. I didn't meet him until 2017. Anyway, in the interview, one of the Boy Scouts asked him, you know, from your long experience in the military, 30-something years, you know, 3 wars under his belt, what is one of the most things that stand out to you the most? And to my surprise and shock, what he said, you know, after all this time in the military and all this time, you know, 3 different conflicts, what he mentioned was what my dad did in Vietnam, and how he won that Bronze Star with V. And so that was like very shocking to me to come across that video. You know, me totally out of the blue. That's the one thing that this retired Lieutenant General remembered after all his years of service was what my dad did in Vietnam when he was a major in charge of my dad. So that's where that comes from.
It just stands out. He just remembers that.
Yeah.
That's wild. So he was his commanding officer that...
Yeah, he was the team leader for the ARVN advisory team. He was a major at that point, and my dad was a lieutenant.
So I'd imagine he'd have to have seen and been involved and, you know, witnessed, because a lot of these accreditations or medals that are given are signed off, you know, I think you get combat action badge or infantry badge if it's been...
CIB,
Yeah, you know, if it's been witnessed or there's like contact, etc. So to get a Valor on the Bronze Star, though, right? That's not a cluster, right? That's the difference between a cluster and a V is for Valor.
Yeah, V is for Valor. You know, you can to get a Bronze Star, you have to be in a theater of combat, theater of operations. But the V is what, you know, separates it. From just being a high performance in a combat zone to a act of valor.
I mean, it's only like a Congressional Medal of Honors above that, I think, is right
Silver Star.
Silver Star.
Above that, and I think it's the Medal of Honor after that. Yeah.
Right. So it's something that was like, I'm going to make sure that you get a device.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, it's in the book too. What's interesting is that General Keller, at the time Major Keller, it took a long time to get my dad this award, and so Major Keller's like, where is this award? So he goes to headquarters and he goes to the personnel clerk there, and he's like, where is this award? And the guy's like, oh, you know, blah blah. And so he starts ripping through this guy's desk, and he finds CIB, Bronze Stars, and all these things in that guy's name. And this guy was like a personnel clerk, you know, E4, never left the base when in any combat operations or anything.
But he was changing
because he was the personnel clerk, he was able to put himself in for all these awards, and so on, and had them. And so General, you know, Richard Keller discovered him, and basically told on this guy and got him in trouble. But what's more interesting about this guy, and he's in the book, I won't give his name out, so you got to go buy the book if you want his name.
Yes.
He ends up at CGSC as a major, and then one of the other guys my dad served with on that advisory team in Vietnam ends up at CGSC and runs into him. And it's like, how the hell are you a major when you were an E4 personnel clerk with all these fake ribbons and badges?
Yeah.
And now you're a major. And so he told on him, and ended up he had this guy. This is before computers and all this stuff. So he was able to fake a commission and end up at CGSC and get away with it. So then he gets kicked out of the Army for this. And so then several years later, this guy turns up on the cover of Soldier of Fortune magazine as a mercenary in Rhodesia, presenting himself as a 3-time Vietnam veteran, you know, Special Forces, Airborne Ranger, all this other stuff. And it was all made up. And
I know this. I know this story. I interviewed the FBI agent that did the sting operation.
Oh, no way. Okay.
On SOFREP. He had a bar.
He's in the book.
This guy had a bar. So, there's another person, I'm going to say, that did the same exact thing you're talking about. And the only way it was found out was somebody had to like say, well, the citation and the citation don't match up with the date of of the account. Something was just
Yeah.
off, and it was, otherwise it would have been scot-free.
Yeah, he would have got away with it. Yeah, it's all a bunch of stolen. I mean, I myself as a commander caught a guy with stolen valor wearing a fake tab and a couple other things, and got him kicked out of the
Bro,
army.
that's real stolen valor.
Yeah,
That's not
it's
the guy
common, man.
going to
Yeah.
the thrift store and buying a jacket and going
Yep.
outside on the street and getting some food or something. That's not
Yep.
what you're talking about. With
Yeah.
intent, with
Yep.
premeditated.
Yeah, and it happens, man. It happens.
Bro.
I wouldn't say it's common, but I mean, it happens. Everybody has an experience, I think, with that. So anyway, all that stuff's in the book, and it's like,
Oh, yeah.
all kinds of things like that I discovered, in the research of the book that really makes it, I think, interesting.
I think you're really a cool dude, and
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. I think you're cool yourself.
thank you very much. And I've had your time for just about an hour on this episode, and it's just been banter back and forth about Born from War, and I hope it much success, and just I hope it sells out. And if it hasn't already, when is it out already? Am I saying it?
Yeah, it came out last week, April 15th, and
On the
so
15th?
it's out now, and it's on. It's through Casemate Publishers. They're a big military history, military type books. Most people know have heard.
Shout
of
out
them.
to Casemate. What's up,
Casemate,
Daniel?
Yeah, they got Daniel.
Rock
yeah,
and roll,
they got
bro.
all kinds of good books. So, they're probably the biggest in the industry as far as that genre, both in the U.S. and the U.K. So it's available through them, but also, any other bookseller you can think of, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all types of different booksellers. And it's also an ebook as well, so you can get if that's your thing as well.
Are you gonna voice it? Are you gonna do an audible for it? Are you gonna sit behind the mic?
I think if it does well, I think that's when they make that leap to that audible book. But right now it's not available as that.
Right. I mean, but are you going to do the read?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, they haven't said anything to me about that.
From your, don't you get to choose that choice? Isn't it like, hey,
I don't know.
wanna
I
do
don't
this?
know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I've been in that
stutter
process.
a little bit, so I don't know how that would work out.
Oh, I think you'd be great. I think you'd be fine. You sound great. It'd be
Oh,
cool to
nice.
hear it from you.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, because it's your account.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I hope people like the book. It's I definitely poured my heart into it. It took me about 3.5 years to write it from putting actual keystroke to Word document.
Sure.
And like I said, it's a whole it's got everything. It's got that larger strategic history piece if you like that. It's got the human experience if you like that. It's got the societal piece across society as a whole, the intergenerational piece between two conflicts. It's got war stories as well. So if that's your jam and you want to read some war stories,
yeah.
It's got that. It's got like everything in it. And so I hope it appeals, like I said, to a broader audience.
You could probably make a series out of every chapter.
You could. That's what I tried to do. I tried to make it. The way I like to read books is I don't like really long chapters.
Yeah.
I like them shorter chapters that kind of neatly wrap it up, so that when I want to go to sleep, I can be like, okay, yeah, I can put a pin in it there, go to sleep.
Yes.
Otherwise, people will leave you hanging, and you're like, oh my god, I got to keep reading, and it's like 4 a.m. So I try not to do that as much.
And if you want to know the rest of the chapters, I encourage you to go check out Born from War, A Soldier's Quest to Understand Vietnam, Iraq, and the Generational Impact of Conflict, written by Patrick W. Naughton Jr., and, a selfless server to our nation. You've done a lot of oaths in your life, so thank you for holding on to those. I feel that from you, and I encourage everyone out there to find your book, get the ebook, and if you do read his book, leave a review for his book wherever you bought it. If you bought it on, the Big River website, then, feel free to leave a review right there so that it can rise up and be picked up even further. So
Yeah, definitely appreciate that if anybody could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big deal, and I know that.
It
And,
is.
the only other secret I would tell you is, as I look over my shoulders, if you go to the airport, okay,
Yeah.
and you want to see your book, this is a trick I heard from another very, 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 very renowned author. I won't say his name, okay? But he said he always takes one of his books with him, and he'll just have him scan it if he doesn't see one of it already on the shelf at the airport. And what the UPC does is says, oh, last one, -1, out of stock, reorder.
I gotta try. I've never heard of that. Yeah.
I'll just let you know, okay? So if you happen to carry one, I'm not saying just set it up there.
Right,
just
right.
try to buy it. Say, hey, I'd like to buy this book. And just
Yeah.
slide it there and let them scan it. And they might charge you $19.99, $21.99.
Yeah,
Cool,
for your own
thanks.
book.
And just know that you get your book back, and they might have to restock your out-of-stock book.
Oh man, I'm gonna try that. I've never heard of that. That's a good TTP right there.
Thanks,
Nice,
Dad.
good. Yeah.
Maybe Mom, actually. No, I know who it was. He's the author. He's a good dude.
Nice.
So,
That's a good one.
I think I'd like to wind down our time. You're always welcome back on the show. We can talk anything you want to talk about, history-wise, your own service-wise, anything that's, on your mind. We could talk more about your book, your new book that you're going to have coming out. I just want to say you have a welcome platform here at SOFREP Radio, and, you've been a really cool gem and a cool lieutenant colonel to have on the show, sir.
No, I appreciate that so much. And, I really enjoy SOFREP. I mean, your guys' venue is really awesome. I love reading your articles and the podcasts, and I'll put a plug for you guys. Anybody out there who's kind of overwhelmed by the mediascape right now, and you're trying to get to the truth. You're looking at maybe left-wing media, right-wing media, and then you're go to you guys for any type of national security, military type stuff.
Yeah, that's
really kind of a really good place that I found that you can get really informed well. So
I appreciate that.
Hats off to y'all, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, Patrick. And with that said, on behalf of Brandon Webb, I always got to shout him out, right? Go check out his books as well. You can find those everywhere. And to Callum, my producer, and to April, who's on the back end, and Chris, who's out there, and Martin, and we know you're chasing everybody out there to sponsor us, so thanks so much, bro. And if you are a sponsor, or you want to advertise on SOFREP, or you want to sponsor the show, reach out to us. We'll bring you on board if you've got what it takes. That's what it is. I'm just gonna be real. Hit us up. Let us know. We'll vet you. So on behalf of Patrick Naughton Jr., my name is Rad, and this is SOFREP Radio saying peace.
You've been listening to SOFREP Radio.